Welcome to From Betrayal to Breakthrough, and here is a mini dose of Dr. Debbie where I'm sharing tips, suggestions, strategies, and sometimes just motivation to have you move past your betrayal once and for all. Hi there. So I had another amazing conversation with one of our Transform members. Transform members work with me privately, along with everything else they get within the PBT Institute. They work with our coaches and our programs and access our community and masterclasses and everything. And they also work with me. So I had this incredible conversation. And as we were talking about it, she even said, "You're probably going to make this into a TikTok or a podcast episode, right?" I'm like, "Yep." And here's why. This is something that so many people do. And I'm sharing this because this is something you may be doing as well. And if so, it's preventing you from healing. And I want to make sure I bring this up. It's so subtle. So many of these things are so subtle, but they really impact you physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. So here's the scenario. You've been betrayed. You are blindsided, heartbroken, disoriented. There's been this psychological earthquake where life is now compartmentalized into before it happened and after it happened. You are devastated. Your life is, a whole different life now. You're looking at things, reviewing things, moving through things you never thought you had to, right? That's the experience. And you found your way to solid ground, and you're able to take a bit of a breath, and you're moving through your experience, kind of reeling from the experience and realizing, okay, I can't afford to stay stuck like this. Let me do the healing. So you start doing the healing work. And what most people do is they just try just to get through it. So maybe you're numbing, avoiding, distracting, right? Maybe you go to your doctor and your doctor puts you on a mood stabilizer or anti-anxiety medication to make the day a bit easier to get through. Maybe you start emotionally eating, you start numbing somehow. You have these thoughts that will not leave you at night. They come out in full force, and it's an effort just to get through your day. You're talking about it with people who, they're doing their best to listen, but they're also getting a little bit frustrated, possibly at some point, because that's all you're talking about. They want to be a good friend to you. They want to be there for you. But if they see you're not moving forward, it's getting frustrating for them, because you're going over the same thing over and over and over again. It's the same story. It's the same thing. You're sharing, you're feeling heard, validated, understood, and that's kind of it. You may be going to therapy where, again, you're feeling heard, validated, and understood. And maybe you do that for a while, or maybe even go to, let's say it's a relational betrayal, and you may even go to couples counseling, and maybe you both feel heard, validated, and understood. Typically, I hear so many stories of couples actually fighting more when they leave couples counseling, because nothing's really getting, it's almost like very often we hear that as couples come into the PBT Institute, the betrayed, their trauma, their experience gets minimized, because the couples counselor is just trying to get them to be okay. But if the betrayer doesn't understand the profound impact of betrayal, and if the betrayed doesn't get recognized as what this really is, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. This isn't just a communication issue. Very often people will say, their counselor said, well, we need to really work on communication. Well, it's way more than communication. Think about it. If you're the betrayed, you may have had all kinds of issues and trauma and all these things, but you didn't choose to betray, right? So yeah, communication is very important, but that's not necessarily the whole thing. So anyway, taking a little bit of a left turn there, but the whole idea is, we have so many people who come into the PBT Institute with therapy trauma, well-meaning therapists, but if they don't understand betrayal, and if they don't know the 5 stages, it keeps people stuck. We see it all the time. Okay, so let's say you even realize that, and now you're like, wait a second, I am just living in stage 3. I'm living a stage 3 life. I'm doing stage 3 things. I'm having stage 3 thoughts. You're going over things and going over and going over. And then you kind of realize one day, you're like, you know what? This is keeping me sick. It's keeping me with all these symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome. It's keeping me hyper vigilant. I'm stuck. I'm not moving forward. Okay, you get to all these revelations and you're doing the work. Now imagine you're even moving forward even more. But now all you're doing is spending your time reviewing what happened, going over what happened, um, just taking a look back again at what happened. So the conversation I had with this transform member, who I know is going to be watching this and laughing as she hears it, I said, "You bothered going through the hardest thing you can ever imagine, right? The hardest part of it is over. Are you really telling me you're going to spend the rest of your life just reviewing this and going over it? You didn't go through the hardest thing you could have ever gone through just to move through it and then talk about it and then get, just go down that rabbit hole of thinking about it. This is an opportunity. You don't want to miss it. And I'm sharing this with every one of you who's in this same spot. If you've moved through the hardest part of this, you owe it to yourself to see that new version of you. This version of you that is intentionally and deliberately created. Who do you want to be? What do you want to try? What do you want to do? What are you ready for now? What experiences do you want to move into? What new activities are you willing to explore? That's why you go through all this. You don't go through all of this so you spend, let's say you struggled with this. Maybe the relationship kind of stunk for the first 10, 20, 30 years, and you didn't even know there was a betrayal, or maybe things were great and then they got real sour and then there was this betrayal. Having gone through that, let's say you have 10, 20, 30, 40 plus years ahead of you. How do you want to spend it? Could you imagine getting to the end of your life and looking back and saying, I went through the hardest thing I can ever go through. And then I spent the rest of my life thinking about it, talking about it, reviewing it. Oh, no, 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 no. You want to look at this saying, okay, what was now that I'm through this, now that I'm out the other side, yeah, I want to review it to learn what can I do differently. I'm not suggesting it's your fault for a minute. When I say, what can you do differently? Can you put up some boundaries you didn't have before? Right? What were you tolerating that this new version of you doesn't want to tolerate anymore? How were you showing up that this new version of you is no longer willing to show up in that way? What about the old you have you outgrown? What about the old you are you willing to let go of? That it's like you have this shirt that you love, right? And you've worn it forever, but at some point it's time to let it go. Whatever it is, right? What aspect of the old you is not, you're not willing to pack that up and take it with you into this next version of you? I always talk about, as people go from stage 3 to stage 4, I explain it where it's like you're moving to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever. It's this hopeful excitement. It's this newness. But think about it. If you were to move, you don't take everything with you. You don't take the things that don't represent the version of you that you are now ready to become. And that's why, as you move into this new space, let's say you were to move, you're setting it up in a way that's different from the old, and you're forced to think differently. You're choosing to act differently, to decorate things possibly a little bit differently. It's the same thing. If it's not a physical move, it's a mental, emotional move. What are you doing that's going to be different? That represents this new version of you that's slowly emerging. And just as if you take a look and you look at new things you've done, you look back and maybe you could say, well, you know what, I remember I didn't really know how to do that, but I kept with it and I tried and now I'm pretty good at it, or whatever. I have I have 4 kids. I always talk about them. Maybe I don't always talk about them, but I have one daughter who is constantly putting herself in these new scenarios where she's forced, absolutely forced, to make these new neural connections and lay down these new patterns that become new habits. And she's constantly in this new stage. And she's like, why am I so, I'm anxious and I'm uncomfortable. And I explained to her, it's because you're always doing something new. If you're not uncomfortable, you're staying in the familiar known. Discomfort is because you're stretching yourself, you're doing new things, you're trying new things, and that means you're growing. And so, as I was explaining to our transform member, to grow is the beauty and is the benefit and is the prize of going through all of this. You don't want to just move through the hardest things and rewire your mind just to then spend the rest of your days reviewing it. No. What does that give you? Like, I even asked her, the last bunch of times when you thought about it, it made you angry, it made you, let's say, bitter, resentful, upset, the injustice of it, all of that. What positive learning or nugget of wisdom? What was gleaned? Was it gleaned? Gleaned? What was gathered from that? Nothing. Nothing. So really, the point here is, if you're going to bother moving through your experience, which many people, they'll take it to a certain level and they'll stop, and then they live that stage 3 life, right? And they have the symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome. Very often they're betrayed again. Very often they're meeting people who are also living that stage 3 life, because you can't attract anything other than where you're at. Everything is energy, right? But if you've bothered to go through that, if you've bothered to move through the hardest thing, and let's say you're working on reconciliation, and rebuilding, let's say you're trying to create this new relationship now. The new relationship is based on a new you and a new them. Otherwise, why would you do it? Right? Why would you go through something so hard just to fall back into the same old way? That's not new. That's the familiar old, the familiar pain. So, and again, I'm not suggesting any of this is easy. The hardest part is moving through it. The second hardest part is when I say that saying, you've heard me say it so often: hard now, easy later. Easy now, hard later. Take your pick. It's one of those two. When I say healing from betrayal is all about hard now, easy later, what I'm talking about is, when I say hard now, it's taking on those thoughts and taking on your behaviors and your actions and your habits in order to stop them. So, for example, if the habit has become, I just keep reviewing what happened, right? You've been through the hardest part and now you're reviewing it. Well, there comes a point and there comes a time where we have to intentionally and deliberately stop that. It's like water going down a rock. It's going down that same familiar path. But if all of a sudden you were to put a rock in a different placement, well, the water would divert itself and go down a different way. It's the same thing. We need a pattern interrupt for those thoughts to redirect them so that they don't go down the same familiar road that they've gone down over and over and over again. What are you doing to change those habitual thoughts that take you down the same road? And I use this example with her, and I'll share it with you as well. It's almost like, let's say you're a binge eater, and let's say you're walking towards the cabinet, you're headed for the chips. You've done it a million times, and you say, well, I'm just going to have one. No, you're not. You're going to find yourself at the bottom of the bag. You've done it so many times before. So the pattern interrupt, it's way too hard when your hand is already in the bag. But the way and the placement to change it is as you find yourself thinking about heading for the chips. walking towards the chips, that's where you want to make that change, where you interrupt that pattern in order to divert your attention and do something else. So back in the day when I was in health and weight loss and all of that, I remember working with people where, like, let's say they had their favorite dessert and every night they were grabbing it. I had them maybe put it in the refrigerator in the garage, right? Where they were walking towards the refrigerator and they had to remember, oh, yeah, it's in the garage now. And that pattern interrupt gave them an opportunity to say, okay, I don't want to do that. Or sometimes they had their favorite couch where they would eat their favorite snack, and I would have them rearrange the furniture. So now there's a chair that's sitting there, and it would be that interrupt, that pattern interrupt. So it was enough of a shock to have them question, do I really want to do this? It's the same thing. Once you've gotten through your experience, your painful experience, and those thoughts just keep creeping up, of course you want to move through them. You need to do the work to manage them effectively. But everyone knows that point in time where you're just going over them again and again and again, just because it's so familiar. And that's where we need that pattern interrupt to change that way of thinking, acting, behaving, because you didn't go through all of this just to spend the rest of your life thinking about it. That is such a waste of trauma. So anyway, I was pretty hard on her, but by the time we were done, she got it. She got it for sure. And I hope you do too. Betrayal is one of the hardest and the most transformative experiences you can have if you use it in your favor, right? We can't change what happened, but we change what we do with it. You don't want to be the poster child of just someone who's been betrayed. You don't want to just have your story like I'm a person who's been betrayed. I mean, let's face it, we're all in a club we never wanted to be in, and we all have our story, and we all have a way better story. Like, think about it. I have my betrayal story, and if I shared it with you, you'd give me sympathy. But isn't it such a more powerful story to say, okay, this was out of all the things I've been through death of a loved one. I've been through disease. I've been in the ICU for 11 days. Right? I've been through trauma, right? And certainly betrayal. And instead of staying stuck, look at the story. Such a better story I have now, right? The PBT Institute, the TEDx talks, the books, this amazing podcast you're listening to, helping thousands of people, and our certification programs and all of that. The story is so much better. I had every right to stay with the old story, right? So do you. And I didn't do anything you couldn't do. There's a proven, predictable roadmap that can take you to a way better story. You didn't go through all of this just to have your story and stay stuck and then solidify it with those symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome. You went through it so that you can emerge realizing, wait a second, I am lovable, worthy, and deserving. I am entitled to create something beautiful. I have all of the ingredients that, that maybe they're raw ingredients right now, but if I put them together, I could make the most beautiful, incredible cake, whatever it is you're trying to create. So you've been through the worst of it already. You owe it to yourself not to go through it just so that you can review it and think about it, so that you can create something incredible because of it. That's the gift. That's the opportunity. That's what's waiting for you in stages 4 and stage 5. Don't waste this trauma. Don't waste it. Remember, if you're in stage 3, stage 4 is waiting for you. You don't want to stay in stage 3. Stage 3 has so many elements to it, but it's also like quicksand. That's the one people get stuck in. So move to stage 4, move to stage 5. Again, it's nothing you can't do. If you're looking for a roadmap, that's what we have. That's what we do within the PBT Institute. Let our coaches help you. Let our community help you. We're all through, every coach that I certify, they've been through it, and they can show you how you can do it too. So I hope this helps, and a little bit of tough love today, but I know how painful betrayal is. And I also know how great it feels to move through the stages and live a stage 5 life, and so can you. I'll see you next time. You need the right tools, support, and the right community to move through the 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough. And we have all that within the PBT Institute. So join us at the PBT, as in post-betrayal transformation, thepbtinstitute.com. There's a version of you who's so confident, healthy, peaceful, and happy on the other end of your healing. And we can't wait to help you get there. We got you. Thanks for listening. And here's to your breakthrough.